Chromosomes. Little strands of nucleic acids and proteins are the fundamental genetic instructions that tell us who we are at birth. Most people are born with 46 chromosomes, but each year in the United States, about 6,000 people are born with an extra chromosome, making them a person with Down syndrome. If you've ever encountered someone with Down syndrome, you know that they are some of the kindest, most joyful people you will ever meet. They truly have something extra. My name is Lisa Nichols, and for 30 years I have been both the CEO of Technology Partners and the mother to Allie. Allie has something extra in every sense of the word. I have been blessed to be by her side as she impacts everyone she meets. Through these two important roles as CEO and mother to Allie, I have witnessed countless life lessons that have fundamentally changed the way I look at the world. While you may not have an extra chromosome, every leader has something extra that defines who you are. Join me as I explore the something extra in leaders from all walks of life and discover how that difference in each of them has made a difference in their companies, their families, their communities, and in themselves. If you like this episode today, please go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen and leave us a 5-star rating. Before we get started, I'm excited to share that my book, Something Extra, is now available. It is rooted in the remarkable spirit of our daughter, Allie, and the heartfelt conversations we've had on the podcast. You'll find wisdom and practical tools to ignite the leader within you and uncover your own something extra. Visit somethingextrabook.com or find it at Amazon or in all major bookstores to order your copy today. I'm excited to have Michael Smith on the show today. Michael is a partner at Fortium Partners. Michael Smith, welcome to the Something Extra podcast. I'm so glad that we can make this work today.
Yes. Thank you for allowing me to be on.
Yeah, I know that we're going to have fun. You and I originally met through HMG,
Correct.
the HMG summits, and then we figured out we knew other people in common. So yeah, but I'm really happy to have you on today. Now I know that you were born in St. Louis. Right, Michael?
Correct.
But then you spent some of your childhood in New Orleans.
Correct.
Do you have like some early memories of growing up that really has helped shaped who you are today and the leader that you are today?
Yeah. I mean, especially growing up in New Orleans, this would have been back in the early to mid 80s time frame. So early 70s into the mid 80s. And so family lived down there, and of course, being down in the deep South, specifically in Louisiana and Mississippi, there is a lot of racial undertones. So the town that we lived in was just a small town outside of Slidell, Louisiana. It's about 40 miles from New Orleans. There was kind of an unwritten rule in that town that if you were African American, you were not welcomed in the town after the sun went down. And so, growing up in that type of environment, you kind of see these weird differences of how people were treated. And so there was a community of African Americans that lived about 5-6 miles outside of the town. They weren't allowed to live inside the city limits. And so it really, I think, impressed upon me. And of course, my mom was very much opposed to any type of racial discrimination. And so she kind of really pressed into us that if we ever treated anyone differently or less, then even after she died, she might come back and kill us.
Oh, no.
So, I mean, she really kind of drilled that in. And so,
Right.
But yeah, I definitely saw there was a difference. And so I think it really impressed upon my life just the importance of individuals, and irregardless of what their ethnicity is, their race, their gender, everyone was created in the image of God and should be respected and
Valuable.
And valuable.
Yes.
And loved equally.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, and I also read somewhere where you had alligators in your backyard in New Orleans. Was there ever a close encounter with an alligator?
Well, you just kind of knew just to kind of steer clear of them. But we lived right in our backyard was the edge of the Honey Island Swamp. And so the Honey Island Swamp is about a 25 square mile swamp. And so a part of it, whenever it would flood during hurricane season, Of course, we had a pretty large fence that separated our backyard from the swamp, but it wasn't uncommon that during the flooding period, you'd see 10, 15 alligators sunning themselves just right on the other side of the fence. And, uh,
Oh
and we
my,
could go back into the swamp, and we would whenever it wasn't all flooded and when it
right.
was dry during the dry season. And we'd go exploring out in the swamps and everything. But yeah, you just kind of knew to, keep your distance from the alligators. And if you didn't bother them, they wouldn't bother you.
They
And
wouldn't bother you. Oh my
so
goodness.
it's very similar to what you might see in the Midwest with deer in your backyard. It wasn't that big of a that
Hmm.
big of a deal to have a alligator in your backyard.
Yeah, right, 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 right. I have to ask you because our nephew married a girl from New Orleans
Hmm.
a couple of years ago, so we were there for the wedding.
Yeah.
And what about crawdad fishing? Did you
Oh
go
yeah.
crawdadding?
Oh
Fishing? Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. And love seafood and
Yes.
jambalaya and gumbo and all of that.
Mhm. Oh,
So
very
no, it
good.
was. But the one downside to living down in the swamp area of Louisiana was that I grew up with arachnophobia, and so there is about every type of spider that you could ever imagine living in the
Oh
swamps.
my goodness.
So yeah,
So
they'd be in your house a lot. So they'd come up through the sinks and the bathtubs and stuff like that. And it's just and some of them were some pretty big ones and some scary ones. But
mhm.
so I think I've been able to overcome a little bit of that, but yeah, I still have some arachnophobia because of that.
I don't blame you. I have that too. I don't know what it's called. I know arachnophobia is spiders. I don't know what it's called if you're scared of snakes. That's mine. I'm just like, I don't care. My husband's like, well, that's a king snake. That's a good snake. I'm like, no, no, no snake. No snake is good. I'm really very afraid of snakes.
Yeah.
But I know that, and then you moved back to Missouri, and I know that when you started college, you started pursuing banking. Now, this is interesting to me, Michael.
Yeah. Yeah.
You started pursuing banking, and then I think you switched to theater.
Oh, I did. I did. So when I first went to college, I thought I wanted to major in banking and finance.
Mhm.
And the whole reason why is that when I was in high school, I'd go into the local bank with my dad, and I always thought it was really interesting what the tellers did. And I guess I should say it's probably even in grade school of what the tellers did. And I thought, well, that would be a neat job to have. So of course, when I went to college. I knew there was a lot more into banking than that, but went into majoring in banking and finance and absolutely hated it.
Hated it.
Yeah, I just did not enjoy it at all, and so I was trying to figure out, well, if I'm not going to do that, what am I going to do? And so
Mhm.
someone had recommended taking a theater class, and they really enjoyed it. Well, I've always enjoyed being on stage and singing and
Performing.
acting,
Mhm.
and probably my lifelong dream would have been to be a Broadway actor
Mhm.
and be on
Mhm.
Broadway and stuff. But anyway, I went into those classes and absolutely loved it. Really enjoyed it. And for 3 semesters, I majored in that. And then one morning, I woke up and reality kicked in that the likelihood you're going to make a living in
Mhm.
that career, which is probably one of the hardest careers to break into, let alone if you break into it to remain successful. And, uh,
Absolutely.
and so, uh, so even though I loved it, I just knew it probably practically wasn't a
Was
career
it
that
going to
I
pay
could
the
do.
bills?
And
Yeah.
I'm vertically challenged, so I'm about five
Mm.
six, 5'7". So if you're going to be a
Mhm.
Broadway actor and be a leading man, you generally have to be taller than the leading lady. And so I knew I'd probably be relegated to a sidekick character, and that would be fine. But it's still, I wasn't interested in living paycheck to paycheck, and
Right.
not even being able to have that because you'll go to hundreds and thousands of auditions, but you may land one opportunity out of all of that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
someone recommended to me they had taken an introduction to criminology, and they thought that I would like that. And I guess I should back up just a little bit. The one major I knew I did not want to do in college was computer science. I had zero desire to do that at all. And
Yeah.
so I yeah, and I think it was just the when I look at the individuals that were majoring in computer science, they were very highly introverted individuals. They had long hair, long beards. They liked to work in rooms with no windows, and they
Mm-hmm.
would rather talk to machines than people. And so I'm a
And that
people
was not you.
no, I'm a people person. I like sunshine, so I'd rather work
Mm-hmm.
someplace with windows. And so anyway, the person that told me about going into criminology, I took that class and again, absolutely loved it. And that's what I ended up majoring in was major in criminology with an emphasis in criminal profiling and a minor in communications. And so I was actually on my way to the FBI and
Mm-hmm.
interviewed with them, and all that went well. But I didn't realize that if you're going to go and work for the FBI or any type of federal agency, you either have to have prior military experience or 3 years of civilian work experience before you can ever even apply.
Mm.
The reason why is because, of course, they require a background check. And to the United States government, you don't exist as an individual until you filed your own tax returns.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so,
wow.
so they told me to go ahead and get a job, and in 3 years they were going to have a pretty large mass exodus of agents that were going to be retiring. So they thought it was pretty good timing. And so now I had to find a job, and
Mm-hmm.
ironically, ended up working at a bank, and they had a AS400 system, and with an OS2 operating system. And this administrator would drive in multiple, like 2.5 hours from Wichita, Kansas, to work on an issue that would take them about an hour, and then they'd have to drive all the way back. And they'd do this 6 or 7 times a year, and this was before the remote diagnostics tools. And so,
Mm-hmm.
so one time they were in the office. I said, "Look, I don't have a clue what you're doing, but maybe it'll save you time if you just call me, walk me through whatever you're wanting to do, and even if it takes us an hour or two, it saves you 5 hours on the road."
All
And he
right.
loved the idea,
Smart.
and so we did that a couple of times. And after doing that, I thought, this is really interesting. This is not what I expected IT to be. And I think the same reason I enjoyed criminology, the whole
Mm-hmm.
analytical investigative side, was similar to IT, right? You're
Yeah.
trying to discover
All the
or figure out a
problems.
problem or an
Yeah.
issue people are having, and you're having to kind of troubleshoot and investigate and kind of have that analytical side of your brain working. So I ended up going back to school, and Microsoft was up and coming at the time, and one thing led to another, and I haven't really shared this story much, but when I decided to go back to school, my wife's dad was a librarian, and he worked at several different places, but during this time he worked at a vocational technical school and was a librarian there. And they had a computer repair course that I decided I was going to take. When I first decided, I thought I might want to go into IT, and the fact that he worked there, he could get me a 50% discount off of the class. Well, the
Awesome.
class was already pretty inexpensive. It was like $37.50 for a semester. And so I was able to get into the class for like less than $15, $16, of which my
That,
father-in-law paid for.
that's crazy,
Yeah. So,
Michael.
and the lady that was teaching that class, she saw that I was kind of picking up on this pretty quickly, and
Mm-hmm.
she thought, well, maybe you would enjoy the IT industry. And so then she put me in touch with a couple of other people, and as I went back to school, then I started focusing on some certifications with Microsoft, and one thing led to another, and before you know it, I was working in the IT industry, and I've been in now for almost 30 years, and
Yeah.
absolutely can't
Been a
imagine doing anything other than IT. So I really
been
enjoy
a
it.
good career for you.
It
You've
has been.
done really well.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking to myself here, what's the moral of the story? Never say never.
Yes.
'Cause
Yes.
you're like, "I don't wanna be in IT."
Yeah.
That's so funny. And I think you, didn't you start your career with Quillogy? We've known Randy Schilling for 40
Oh,
something
yeah,
years.
yeah. So originally it was
Mhm.
Volutech, and then he had changed
Yes.
it to Quilty. So yeah, that would have been my third job in IT. So I
Mhm.
started as a subcontractor with Sprint PCS, which was a kind of a shoot off of Sprint corporate back in the late '90s, mid to late '90s. And so that was my first job. And then I went and worked for an insurance company as a network administrator. And while I was working there, I really enjoyed the job, but the person I reported to, they were just one of those just old fashioned leaders that really felt that the way to motivate people was to yell at them and demean
Mm.
them in front of other people. And
Sticks
that's just
instead of
not my
carrots.
style. Yeah,
Sticks
I just
instead of
wasn't my
carrots. Yeah.
style, and didn't like that. And so this was in Lawrence, Kansas, University of Kansas, Jayhawks is there in Lawrence, and they were having a job fair. And so I called up the university and I said, well, I didn't go to school there, but would it be okay if I came and participated in the job fair? And they said, sure, it's open to the public. And so I went there and took several copies of resumes, and I'd walked around to different booths, and I had one resume left. And I was actually headed out the door, and the last booth right beside the back door was Solutech. And so I dropped my resume off there and talked to Bruce Roquet, which I don't know if you remember Bruce
I
Roquet,
don't
or
remember
yeah,
Bruce. No.
and the head of HR at that time. And so I met with him, talked with him, and so anyway, and then I left the job fair. Didn't expect to hear anything back, and 2 or 3 days later, I get this call from the general manager of Solutech in Kansas City, and they had mentioned that the head of HR had provided the resume to him, and they were looking more for entry level individuals, and so I was a little bit more experienced than what they were looking for,
Hmm.
but they still wanted to have a conversation, and so I went into the office there in Kansas City, interviewed with them, and long story short, they brought me on board as a consultant, and then was a about 6 months later was promoted to a senior consultant. Eventually, was up to a managing consultant, and then about 4 years or so into working for Solutech, and they had changed their name to Quilogy as well,
Hmm.
rebranded that. Then I had an opportunity to take over the Kansas City operations as the general manager, and
Oh,
did that for
very
about
cool.
3 years before I moved on.
Hmm.
But no, Quilogy was, I really enjoyed that. I was with them for probably close to 7 years, and
Yeah.
knew Randy Schilling really well, and still stay in contact with him. I know he
Hmm.
started a couple of other
He's
companies like
doing
Portside and
so
others.
much,
So,
right? Yeah, he
yeah,
turned the old post office in
yeah.
St. Charles into kind of a WeWork space, and
Mhm.
yeah, he's a good guy. I mean, we've known him for a really long year or a long time, rather, several years, but a little bit different culture, right, than the
Mhm.
one that you came from.
Oh yeah,
Better
yeah,
culture, much better, right?
yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I think they were really known for being people centric, people
Mhm.
focused, entrepreneurial, and I'm
Yep.
sure that fit with your personality much better. Well, I know that you spent nearly a decade at Thermo Fisher
Mhm.
Scientific, right? Which was, I
Yep.
don't know how big now, but like at the time, about a $17 billion
Yeah.
company. What were
Yeah.
some of the much larger, right? I mean, what were some of those formative leadership lessons that you learned in that, 10-year span, Michael, being in this large global enterprise now?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I learned a tremendous amount, not only from the leadership there at the company, but the fact that they were a global organization.
Yes.
So I had teams that I managed in North and South America, Europe, and Asia, and so to be able to be opened up to the entire world, right? Because I mean,
Hmm.
I grew up in a small town in Louisiana, moved to a small town in Missouri. I went to college in Missouri, moved to Kansas after college. I met my wife in college, and we got married right after college and lived in Kansas. And so I had traveled to some states and things like that, but not a lot. And so yeah, the opportunity to be able to travel the world and meet all kinds of different people from different cultures and different nations was just very enlightening and very eye
Yes.
opening, and even more so, even that much more appreciative of the fact that we live in the United States, and the freedoms that we have, because
Not
not
every
every
country.
country has that,
That's
and
right.
so learned a lot of that just from a global perspective. But then the CIO for Thermo Fisher, her name was Ina Kamens, and I reported to her, and she became my mentor, and so I worked closely with her for a number of years at Thermo Fisher, and the first opportunity that I had to be my own CIO. After I had left Thermo Fisher, she was the individual that had provided me a recommendation to the company that hired me and stuff. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, it's really, yeah, I can't thank Thermo Fisher enough for just the opportunity and the experience that I gained working with them.
Mhm.
And
Well,
so, yeah,
when you were a CIO, when you left there, is that when you went to American Academy
yep,
of
yep.
Family Physicians?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Very
I
good.
played the role of like a segment CIO at
Mhm.
Fisher, where there was over one of their four operating groups called the Specialty Diagnostics Group, and it had six divisions in there, and I reported to the global CIO, which was Ina Kamens and stuff. But yeah, becoming the CIO, the top CIO for a company for the first time was with the American Academy of Family Physicians, and so
Yeah.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
with them for about 6.5 years and really led a full end-to-end, not only digital but operational transformation for that company. So that was really rewarding and a lot of fun. And
Mhm.
ended up winning the CIO 100 award while I was there at the AFP for the technology that we had implemented and just the leadership there. And then we were voted one of the top 100 companies to work for in IT. Was
That's
with that company.
terrific.
And so yeah,
That's
it was
terrific.
just a lot of, again, professionally rewarding and a lot of fun and a challenge.
Mhm. Mhm. Right. Yeah, those awards are really important, Michael, because like for the top places to work in IT, one of the things that we're always wrestling with, right, is the attraction
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
talent,
yeah,
and people want to work for those type firms. So those are great. Those are great things to have. I know that you did lead mergers, acquisitions, major transformations. Is there one integration story that really stands out to you, Michael, that was just incredibly rewarding or maybe challenging?
yeah. It'd probably be more the challenging side. And this was one of the things that as a leader, you always want to be successful in what you do, right? And so
Mhm,
we were
mhm.
implementing SAP for one of the business units that had recently been acquired, and they were brought on board, and we were going to implement SAP and bring them into the fold. And it was just an incredibly challenging project. And I remember being on a call with the global CIO at the time and the president of that particular company. And Ina was really recommending we need to put a pause on this project, and that we need to kind of regroup and kind of make sure we've got full engagement from the stakeholders, because it was just some of that was just kind of falling by the wayside. And being
Mhm.
a young leader, I thought, no, I think if we can just keep pushing through on this, we're going to be successful. And so she went ahead and allowed me to go ahead and keep pushing that project forward. And
Mhm.
worst mistake that could have ever been made. And 6 months later, we're pausing the project, and
Oh
it
my
created
goodness.
just we eventually got across the finish line, but it took a lot longer than what we originally thought. But it was just a lesson learned that individuals that have been in those situations before and are providing wisdom and advice of, if they're recommending to do something, then at least hear that out,
Really
because they
consider
have
it.
gotten those battle scars from being in those
Mhm.
situations before. And I think if we would have paused the project 6 months earlier, per the recommendation of the global CIO, not only would the project have been completed even sooner, right? It just would have not put a bad taste in everyone's mouth, right? And
Mhm,
I think
mhm.
trying to prolong an effort that was just not going to be successful until you paused it and reset everybody's expectations, that was a big lessons learned for me.
Yeah. Well,
But
and I'm just thinking about Ina.
yeah,
She was the type of leader that said, "I really do believe we need to pause this," but she did
uh-huh.
empower you to go
Yep,
ahead,
yep,
right, with what you thought, so
yep.
And sometimes that's
And I don't
hard
think she
as
would
a
have.
leader.
Yeah, I don't think she would have ever put me in a situation where it would have been career ending. I think she would have probably
Hmm.
jumped in and then prevented that. But I think she also knew that the best way to
To
learn
learn.
sometimes is to fail. And
Yes, yes,
but she had created an environment where we could fail safer
safely.
than if
Hmm.
we were, just out there on our own, or if she had thrown us out to the wolves and stuff like that.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, so critical to have those environments because really I've thought about that a lot. You've got really without innovation, even if you're doing things and executing excellently, you stagnate, right? But
Yeah.
then the opposite can happen. You got innovation without executing with excellence. There's chaos.
Yep.
But you've got to continue as an organization to innovate, and you cannot do that if you're not allowed to safely try things and
Exactly.
experiment,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
So, well, now you're a partner at Fortium. So,
Yep.
what drew you to Fortium? And I'd love for you to tell. I mean, I know about Fortium,
Mhm.
and in fact, um, what I mean, I'm just trying to think. Oh, Burke Archery.
Oh
You
yeah,
know
yeah,
Burke
yeah,
Archery, yes, and we
yeah.
had an office in Dallas for 6 years, so I know Burke, but
Okay.
tell our listeners about Fortium if they're not familiar.
Yeah, yeah. So Fortium is the largest technology leadership as a service firm in the country. So their whole focus is providing seasoned, experienced executives that have played the roles of CIO, CTO, and CISO executives in various different companies, and providing those resources on both a fractional and interim basis. So,
Mhm.
for some of the large clients within Fortium, we may be brought in when a CIO, CTO, or CISO exits the company, either by their choice or being asked to leave. We
Right.
would come in and fill that gap and play that role on a full time basis while the company is then looking for whoever the permanent person would be.
Mhm.
And we'll help vet candidates out. We're not a search firm, we're not anything like that, but we'll work with a lot of different recruiting firms. But we'll also help with the interview process and make sure that whoever is being hired fits within the culture of that
Yeah.
company because we've been
You've
now
been there.
working with that client. Yeah.
Right.
And for more smaller or mid-sized companies, we'll provide that same leadership on a fractional basis. So it may be a company that now has suddenly grown and they've realized they need a technology leader, and so then they'll bring in Fortium. And then our fastest growing area is with private equity. And so private equity firms
Mhm.
will then bring us in to manage their portfolio of businesses from a technology perspective, or they'll use our expertise in the due diligence from a technology perspective, or even the post acquisition integration and strategy of how to bring this particular company into their technology footprint of the rest
Mhm.
of their portfolio. And
Mhm.
so yeah, I met Fortium several years ago, and we had crossed paths, and I had spoke with them and had an opportunity to come on as a partner then. And it was probably about 4 years into my role at American Academy of Family Physicians, and I had really worked with the board and the leadership team at the AAFP to really buy into the vision of what I had recommended to them from a technology strategy. And it just didn't feel right that before we were done, I was going to jump
That you
ship.
were gonna jump.
So
Yeah.
I said, look, it just
You
doesn't
gotta
sound
see
like
it
the
through.
timing is right. And so anyway, we parted ways. And so toward the um, end of the AAFP engagement, we crossed paths again, and it just happened to just be at a time where we somehow connected again, both
Yeah.
on LinkedIn, but also in a human connection, and we started having discussions again. And I thought, well, yeah, I think the time is right, and so I jumped on as a partner with them. And Fortium has now been in business for almost 12 years. Like you say, they're headquartered in Dallas, or
Mhm.
Plano, Texas is where they're headquartered. Burke Archery is the primary founder. There's a couple of founders, but he was the primary one. And many of those individuals came from a previous company called Tatum Consulting,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and then they had left and then started Fortium, and Fortium has continued to grow, double-digit growths year over year, and take on a lot of different opportunities and clients. And now there's about 160 of me's in the company across the United
Mhm.
States. And so
Yeah.
I'm in what's called the South Central region, which would be the center part of that region is Dallas, of course, but then it goes up through Arkansas, Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, that area there. So
Mm-hmm.
me being based in Kansas City, I'm the only partner for Fortium in Kansas City.
In Kansas City.
So
Mm-hmm.
I'm working with companies in Kansas City, have talked to a number of different companies in St. Louis, Omaha, of where they might need that fractional technology leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you're a CIO out there or a CTO out there that's in between or
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
figure out what's next for you, it may
yep,
be something to look at. And I remember at the time, um, when I first met Burke, I mean, what happens sometimes is an interim will go in because I remember Fossil was using an interim
yeah,
at the time, and then that person ends up becoming the CIO, the permanent CIO
yeah.
on some occasions, right? So,
Yeah, yeah. It's not really their model to do that, but
yeah,
yeah, it has happened in
but
the
it's
past.
happened,
Yeah,
right?
and so
Right.
so yeah.
Oh my goodness, Michael, I've got so many more questions for you, but we need to take a quick break and we'll be right back on the Something Extra podcast with Michael Smith.
Hey there. In a challenging business climate like this, savvy leaders look to technology to find an edge. This can mean the difference between staying ahead of the curve or playing catch-up. It's time to collaborate with the highly skilled experts at Technology Partners. Our team of technologists draws upon decades of experience for your project, with each bringing a passion for solving problems and a track record of success. How can we help you overcome your biggest technology challenges? Visit technologypartners.net to book a free consultation with one of our leaders.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Something Extra podcast with Michael Smith. We've been having a lot of fun talking about technology leadership. I want to ask you, Michael, you have often said that your approach to IT is through a business first lens. And I love that. It's business first. It's not technology for technology's sake. Can you speak into that a little bit more? What does that look like in practice?
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of it, at least personally for me, comes from the fact that I didn't start my career in IT. So I
Mm-hmm.
started it more on the business side or outside of IT, even though IT is part of the business, right? It's just kind of a different perspective on there. And so when I look at technology, I've never been a gamer. I've never been a technology widget type person. I've always been drawn to the fact of what technology can do for business operations, right? So, how can
Mm-hmm.
it really create a competitive advantage? How can it really drive innovation, productivity, profitability? And so, I think that has served me well growing up in the technology ranks where I'm able to communicate not only with the business leaders but also with other technology leaders. And I think the best compliment that I ever received in my career was prior to becoming the general manager at Quillogy. The previous general manager had done a performance review of me one of the times that we kind of went through that process, and I was a managing consultant at the time. And he had put into my performance review, he said, Michael has a unique ability to effectively communicate with the boardroom at the same time that he's communicating with the data center.
That's
And
awesome.
so where he was really kind of coming across was that he can comfortably communicate in the language of executives, right? Of communicating their language of business operations, but then
Mm-hmm.
taking that information and then converting that over to technologists for them to understand what do they actually need to build
Mm-hmm.
related to whatever the organization is trying to do. And it's served me well in my career. And I've
Mm-hmm.
had opportunities where I've like I said, I've ran not only digital transformations but operational transformations as well. And so no, I think the best thing that could have ever happened to me, at least in the IT industry, is that I didn't start in IT,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
just gave me a different perspective of
Perspective.
how business operations run.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and I would say that that is definitely a differentiator for people, is being able to translate
Yeah.
and talk to, really understanding the business, being able to communicate. That's one of the things that we teach in our technology leadership experience,
Hmm.
where we're taking high potentials to that next level is really communicating up and down. And you got to be able to do that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, but, well, did you use data as a strategic? Tell me about data, in any of your strategic transformations that you've done. How important is that, Michael?
Oh, it's extremely important. From a technical perspective, I started my career more on the engineering side, and I mentioned earlier in our conversation that one of my first jobs was with Sprint PCS, and if you remember much about that company, the prime contractor that was running the IT operations for Sprint PCS was a company called EDS that
Yes.
was owned by Ross Perot.
Yes.
And this was actually when Ross Perot was still running that company. And so with EDS, they were kind of building out the nationwide infrastructure network for Sprint PCS.
Mm-hmm.
And so coming in as a subcontractor, so EDS had hired the contracting firm that I was working with, and I was a subcontractor at Sprint PCS. Um, I was at the right place at the right time, and I think it was a God thing for me. But it was at the right place at the right time that I had an opportunity to really work with some really brilliant engineers
Mm-hmm.
at just kind of the ground level. And so that's kind of where I started my career. But I slowly moved from engineering into data analytics. And so, from a technical perspective, I became a data warehouse developer, a data warehouse created data warehouses, a database administrator, things like that. And so I really kind of understood the power of what data can do for organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And because when you think about how a lot of companies interact with data, there's still a tremendous number of companies that use Excel, right? And Excel is
Yes.
a very powerful tool, but it's also a dangerous tool because you can easily manipulate data, right? You can easily create formulas that are going to modify what the end result's going to look like. And so sometimes when people are trying to sell a business case, they're manipulating the data to really tell a story that may not necessarily be true in
Be
that
the
organization.
truth, right?
And so I was always a big proponent of creating data warehouses where now you're creating visualization tools that you're not able to manipulate that data. So the information you're pulling from that data warehouse and that visualization tool is what's actually happening in the organization. And so I love to use the saying that there is no concept of bad news. It's just news, right? Because even bad news could be turned into good news if an organization knows that something bad is happening early on, and
Yes.
they can adjust and change that in their organization and actually turn it into a positive.
Yeah.
And so data analytics plays a critical role in any type of strategic decision making, because if you have not manipulated that data, the data is telling you the factual truth. Whether you
Right.
like it or not,
Paints the
that's the
picture of
factual.
what's really
Right.
happening.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think
Mm-hmm.
most executives, even if the story is not a positive story, they'd rather know that
Mm-hmm.
sooner than later to make adjustments so they
Absolutely.
can get it to a position to where it is telling a good story. And if it is a good story, then how can they continue to cultivate that
Mm-hmm.
to continue to be successful as a company? So yeah,
Right.
data is key.
Yeah. We always say numbers don't lie.
Exactly.
The data does not lie.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
good. Well, let me ask you this because, I mean, I'm sure you have seen this a lot. What do some of those common barriers that you see, Michael, of an organization when they're faced from moving from legacy systems to cloud-based ecosystems? I mean, there are some organizations out there that still have legacy systems.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, the biggest challenge is the fear of the unknown, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they know what they know, even and many times they know that what they're using is
It's
not
not
the
the
best
right thing.
technology, but
Yeah.
it's comfortable. They know it's
Mm-hmm.
working. They're just afraid of, if we change this, what if it starts breaking all the time? What if things are not working? What if the data is not correct and all that? And really kind of educating organizations that the supportability of legacy systems, the technology that's there, the individuals that are supporting that technology are not always going to be there. And the
Yeah.
next generation is not really focusing on that legacy technology. And so you're creating an albatross around your neck that could potentially bring your company to ruin if
Right.
you do not, understand how to innovate with new technologies. And so yeah, I've had to go through a lot of different companies and educate organizations on the fact that Yes, some of these legacy systems are tried and true and very stable and very supportive, but you're just not going to be able to innovate and grow and expand
Mm-hmm.
beyond a certain point. And so
Yeah.
educating them that moving to the cloud is scary, right? But it's also an opportunity for you to expand your horizons of what you as an organization are doing and
Mm-hmm.
capabilities of how you can integrate with other systems, right? I mean, you use the example of Salesforce as one of the largest SaaS providers. They integrate with, I think now it's up to 240,000 different applications is in the Salesforce marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's almost like an unlimited opportunity of how
Right.
you can expand how you operate your organization by using some of these cloud-based technologies that you would never be able to do that in a legacy on-premise.
Environment, right,
Yeah.
on prem, yes, for sure, yeah, and it's just so important, and to your point, these legacy systems, the young kids that are coming up through, are not learning those, and, that oh my goodness, yeah, we've had some of those. We've had
Oh
some of those where we had to go find a Fortran person,
yeah. Yep.
for, and it's difficult. It's difficult. You know, let's talk about people. Let's talk about people, Michael. Many people have described you as a people first leader. And, where does that mindset come from?
Um, Again, it goes back early into my career. So when I worked for Sprint PCS as that subcontractor, again, my first job in IT, um, I had I was always kind of a risk taker type of individual, and I would always kind of challenge myself. And I can go all the way back to my junior year in high school, where I started to kind of establish an annual goal of what I wanted to accomplish within the next year.
For you.
And I still do it to this day. So
Yeah.
my goal date is July 23rd every year. So I'll set a new goal, and the whole purpose of that goal is to accomplish that before July 22nd of the next year, right?
Yeah.
And so, doing a dare to myself when I was a subcontractor with Sprint PCS, I reached out to the CIO for Sprint PCS, and I sent them an email and saying, told them my name and this is what my role was. But I really was wanting to sit down and talk with them about if I wanted to, at some point in my career, become a CIO like themselves,
Have
what
his
would I
job.
need to do? Yeah, what would I need to do to
Right.
get to that point in my career? And so I sent the email, never expecting to get a response. Well, I did get a response from the CIO, and he appreciated me reaching out to him. And so he then had his assistant set up some time for us to meet. Now, originally, our meeting invite was for 30 minutes. And I was going to go to his office and we were going to sit down. And I had a pad of paper of all these
You had
questions.
all your questions lined up.
Yeah. He
Mhm.
ended up meeting with me for 2 hours. That was life transformative
Mhm.
because not only was I not an employee of Sprint PCS, I wasn't even a contractor. I was a subcontractor. So I was, kind of in the eyes of Sprint PCS, I was less than dirt, right? There was no reason for this person to invest this time with
Yeah.
me. And so, and I, of course, he shared all the different things of what he would recommend I would do in my career if I wanted to ultimately eventually become a
Mhm.
CIO. And he recommended, you're going to need to go back to school. He highly recommended me to get in my MBA. And so I accomplished my MBA back in 2008 and a lot of other things that he recommended. Well, I walked out of his office thinking if I ever had an opportunity to be a leader, that's the
That's
type
the
of
kind
leader
of
I want.
leader that you wanna be.
I
Oh,
want to be a servant leader. I want to be able to invest in people and give people an opportunity to progress in their career, even if those opportunities allow those individuals to exceed what I've
mhm,
accomplished in my career,
mhm.
because that's what that person did for me. And,
Yeah.
and so,
That's
so
remarkable.
yeah,
Did you ever go back and tell him what an impression that made on
I,
you? Were
I
you able to
tried
do that,
to.
Michael?
Yeah, I tried to, and I was able to track him down, and I sent him a message on LinkedIn, but I've also heard that he's retired
Yeah.
and he's no longer in. So I don't know if he ever received the message or anything, but
Mm-hmm.
it definitely was something that I mean, it was a pivotal point in my early career of really kind of putting me on the path and a trajectory of what type of leader I want to be in the future.
Yeah, that's such a good point because I do think that we need to figure that out, right? I mean, and the people right in front of us a lot of times lets us know. That's what I talk about in my book. I had a really amazing leader. He was not my boss, but he was my boss's boss,
Hmm.
Don Imholtz, when I was at McDonnell Douglas.
Yeah, yeah,
And just the way he treated people and the way that he invested, just like this leader did with you.
yeah.
Yeah, I was like, that's the kind of leader I want to be too. Um, I've got here a couple, Burke Autry. I read a interview that you had done with Burke. It said, talking about a forward thinking perspective on leveraging innovation, and you're talking about that you have been recognized because you were in the CIO 100 for strong leadership and mentoring. And what advice would you give to a CIO about mentoring? And then I love what you talked about, your yellow pad of paper. You
Yeah,
went in with your questions, right?
yeah.
I mean, in the technology leadership experience, as you know, that is a huge pillar
Mm,
that's one of the four pillars is the mentee mentor. What advice would you give to a mentee and how to be the best mentee?
yeah. Well, first on the mentor side, just do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a leader, there's nothing more rewarding than being able to mentor someone. I always get more out of mentoring an individual than maybe that mentee receives from me.
Mm.
And so I think just do it, right? As a leader, we're called to be able to lead the next generation of leaders,
Yes.
right? If we want leaders to be good leaders in the future, then they need to be mentored by good leaders, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so that's the first recommendation on the mentor side is if you're not doing that currently, find an opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For the mentee side, I would just like what I did when I met with that individual, be a sponge. Listen to what those leaders that have been through those situations in the past, listen to what they're saying, right? You may
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily agree with everything that they're saying, but take it in, listen
Yes.
to it. Again, be that sponge to where you're open to see things from a different perspective, right? Because every generation comes into the workforce from a different perspective, right? And they look at individuals that are close to the time of retiring, thinking that, I don't understand why they're doing the things that they're doing because I'd never do it that way. Well, that's possible, but times constantly change, right? Innovation brings new things that you just have to always be looking at things from a different perspective. And if you're the
Mm-hmm.
mentee, come in with an open mind, with a different perspective of looking at the world, and then again take that wisdom and advice that that leader is willing to invest their time into you. Take advantage of that,
Yeah.
and it will reap you significant amount of benefits.
Yeah.
And so yeah, uh,
Could not agree more. Well, and then I think about you. You actually took some of that advice and executed on it.
yes,
And I'm
yes,
sure for a mentor, that's really fulfilling because if you give this advice and they don't ever change or do
mhm, mhm,
do many things, the things that you've suggested, that may say something a little bit different, like,
yeah.
about that person. But well, oh my goodness, you've got so many other things here to talk about. But you know, let me just ask you this, Michael, because this is the question I ask every person that's on the podcast. What do you believe is the something extra that every leader needs?
Um, I think empathy.
Mm.
I think it's so. One of the things that again, because that individual was willing to invest the time they invested in me when I was early in my career, and again, just wanting to be that servant leader. When you're managing people, you're seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly of individuals, but you're not necessarily always understanding why that
Right.
side of that person is coming out of them during that particular time, right? It could be a
Mhm.
very stressful time, but there could also be a lot of things that's happening to them personally, right?
Yes.
And sometimes leaders get caught up in the motions of an employee is just another number, right? Is just another cog in the wheel, right? But they're
Mhm.
not necessarily looking at them as an actual person, right?
Human.
Yes, and having empathy with them. I think one of the most humbling compliments that I ever received from an individual, and I was just in a one-on-one meeting with him, and it was actually a skip level meeting. So
Mhm.
it was they didn't report to me; they reported to someone else, and that person they reported to reported to me. And they were sharing some things that were going on, and I was very attentive, listening and everything. And toward the end of the conversation, they said this comment that has just stuck with me. Is they said, Michael, you really have kind eyes. And
Aw.
I thought, that is, I'd never heard that before, right? Because you
Mhm.
could hear someone say, well, you just your voice is very calming, your actions are very I feel safe, with your actions. But for someone to say you have kind eyes, that means that they feel like you were listening and that they were.
Mhm.
And I think a leader that can demonstrate empathy and be able to really relate to the individuals that they're leading, those are the individuals that will follow that leader at all costs,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and and so, yeah, I think that's one of the most important traits that a leader needs is empathy.
Wow. You have kind eyes.
I don't know. That was really that
That
was. I mean, I was touching.
you
That,
saw they
yeah,
but what they meant is that you see them.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you
yeah.
see them. So that's beautiful. Well, Michael, this has been so much fun. I think we could go on and on and on, but we're out of time here. Thank you so much for being on the show. And I know that your comments, I know that your experience is going to really help our listeners.
Well,
So
thank
thank
you.
you for
Thank
sharing.
you for inviting me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to today's show. Something Extra with Lisa Nichols is a Technology Partners production. Copyright Technology Partners, Inc., 2019. For show notes or to reach Lisa, visit tpi.co/podcast. Don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you listen.